And we're live. Welcome, Ivan Gavranic. Is that how you say it? You're European descent, but with the most amazing Australian accent from Perth.
Correct. It's Gavranic, so Gavranic. Yeah.
Gavranic.
That's okay. It's all right.
I'm
It's
another
fine.
bogan Aussie. I should have practiced that. So, yeah, it's so great to have you on. I'm completely intrigued by your journey, and you've had nothing to do with data-driven fasting or optimizing nutrition, other than a whole lot of back and forward on Facebook between us and having a chat over the last couple of years. But you popped up a couple of years ago on a few podcasts after getting to 5.9% body fat and pretty much maintaining it ever since, which is completely insane in most people's books. But I just love the mentality and the mindset that you've displayed to get there. So really, really eager to chat about that today, and just to help people. Most people in our community are not, the sort of middle-aged and trying to avert obesity and diabetes, but there's so much to be learned from the process you've taken. So
Cool.
yeah. So what was your why? How did you go, hey, I want to get into fitness to start with? You're a bit more of a bodybuilder, bulked up before you said, I'm going to get down to 5%.
Yeah. Okay. So my whole, I guess, fitness journey was, I've always been active ever since I was a kid. I used to play soccer growing up. I was just very into athletics in general. So when my sort of teenage years hit and I realized, oh wow, I'm quite like a little skinny soccer player. I'm going through puberty, and just pretty much like every adolescent boy, you start training to impress the females. And then as most people who go through their lifting journey, they realize they start impressing more males than females, and females don't really care about those sort of things. But that was sort of how things just kicked off with regards to the whole training aspect. And ever since I just got into it, I've always just been driven. What initially started off as just sort of aesthetic purposes, and that probably fueled me for a while. I only used to just train for just to look better and feel more confident, etc., which were, again, viable goals, but they weren't really like a powerful why to keep, but when you're young, you don't really care about those things. You don't really think about those things. So training was just something that I did, because back in the day, I used to party as well, quite a bit as well. Growing up, like in early 20s, love partying. So I had this mixture of like partying and training and studying. It wasn't a good mix. And then when I actually stopped partying as much when I started doing personal training. So that was when I was about 20, 21. I started doing, I never meant to start doing coaching. I did my sports science degree, and then I was going to go into phys ed teaching. I've always admired phys ed teachers. I've always wanted to be like the cool phys ed teacher. And then I was just like, I don't think I could handle kids every single day. And I started coaching on the side at just like my local gym, and I really enjoyed that side of things. I only started doing it on the side because as a job, but I just really enjoyed the process. I really love seeing people get results. I love seeing people change their lives. And I was like, man, if I can change lives with this, I didn't have much knowledge back then, but obviously you think you know everything because you train at the gym. But even with like relatively minimal knowledge, you still have the impact and the power to actually change people's lives in that sort of stuff. So I can imagine, and then ever since then, I've just been obsessed with just studying, research, body composition stuff. And then obviously that carries over into other things such as like mindset, lifestyle, behaviors, sleep, and it's so many things that go into optimizing body composition, so to speak, that go far beyond just hit your macros, hit your protein, get your calories in. There's so much more to it. And that's sort of what continues to fuel me for years and years and years, trying to find that winning formula for clients and help them in every way I could. So
you're completely fascinated by the process on an intellectual level, and then went, I'm going to try and put this into practice. It's like me with nutrition. It's like, this is a completely fascinating problem that I want to try and solve and dig deeper than anybody else has, and quantify it and analyze it. And so you said in a podcast that you'd trained for like 500 days straight with a bodybuilding max out every time, 500 days straight. And like, I know when I get to my end of my 4 week cycle, I'm completely burnt and you need to crash and, you know, you fall off the wagon and you're eating crap for a bit until you recover. And like 500 days straight would have been insane. So you got bulked up, I suppose, to a point where you went, okay, this is as far as I can take this. And you went, what the hell? I'm going to see how lean I can get and take it the other way. Is that pretty much how it went down?
Yeah. So that was again just like another big experiment that I was trying. It was sort of full body training every day. And when I say like max out, it would be I would push as hard as I possibly could on that specific day, but it wouldn't be like a heavy compound lift every day, right? That's impossible for me to do. But it would, because I was training so frequently, my per session volume was quite low. And I think looking back, it was, yes, it was probably overkill, but it also implemented an amazing habit of just showing up to the gym every day, regardless of sort of how you felt. And the amount of times I remember rocking up to the gym feeling like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to lift anything today. And as soon as I start warming up, I get into it, I hit a PB. So, and then that's when I started realizing that your body lies, feelings lie. And it's just amazing how easily you can sort of short circuit yourself, or how easy it is to convince yourself to just not go because you feel a little bit sore, you're a little bit tired. And I've actually carried that through pretty much ongoing. I still train every day, but my training is very, very different now compared to what it was. So, and we'll talk about that later on. But yeah, even though crazy as that was, again, it still instilled a really, really good habit of mine of just doing something active every day, being active and knowing that I'm not going to break. If I'm intelligent about it, just show up and do something. So it was a really good time. But yeah, it was pretty nuts.
Yeah, you got to the point where you're, I've taken this as far as I can. Let's see if I can put all my theoretical knowledge into practice and get as lean as I can and get to that. Absolutely sort of shredded level.
Yeah. But again, I think that the reason that I could do that was because I spent all my years trying to add muscle. Like I never went through like a serious cut throughout my entire life, you know. But again, you can say I never got like over fat, right? I was never, you know, I was relatively lean always, and I managed to sort of maintain that for a while, and then
so and then I ended up. It's the bodybuilding pre-cut sort of look, is it?
Yeah. So like it was not fat, right? But then, so I always managed to sort of hang around that point for my whole life. So I've never been obese, which we can probably touch on a little bit later on. That's probably an advantage because, and we'll talk about that later. So sort of got to that level, and then I was just like, you know what? Not really keen on this bodybuilding sort of lifestyle anymore. That's when I started dabbling in more gymnastics, calisthenics sort of style training. My joints are feeling a lot better after incorporating that sort of stuff. And so I had all these other reasons to sort of want to get leaner. And then I think it was just a bit of a test. Initially, it was just a test. I was like, I want to get as lean as I possibly can and just sit there and just see what it feels like to sort of be there at around that point. Because you hear a mixture of stories, right? You hear people like, oh no, it's like you're knocking on death's door and you can't do anything and this and that. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Yeah. But and I'm sure we'll talk about this as well. I think the way that I approached it with my coach and with the R&T team was we went about it in a much more intelligent way, or a bit of a different way. And it was the whole stay as active as you possibly can while also eating a ton of food, right? So the whole like G-flux theory, right? So I was sort of just wanted to experiment with that and just be like, well, look, I'm a personal trainer. I'm single. I can dedicate quite a bit of time to this. Yep. I just want to see what, and I love it. Yeah. It's like, what can we do to this human organism and just see how it responds. And it just turned into like a sort of like a big experiment. And I think because I treated it in that fashion, I never treated it as, oh, I just want to get to this fat loss goal and that's it. You know, or I want to celebrate it with something, or I want to step on stage, or I want to do a photo shoot or anything like that. There was never like an end goal to it. which is what I think made it much easier to sort of, when I got there, it was just like, cool, now we're just going to stay here. I don't need like an external motivator to sort of stay there. So that was, I think that looking back, there's probably a very big difference compared to how most people do it. And I think that all that mentality and that just sort of experimental viewpoint made it, in a weird way, sort of just easier to be there. It's weird.
You get lost in the experiment. A lot of people with the data-driven fasting or the nutritional optimization masterclass, when people just get lost in the process of solving the puzzle of nutrition and taming their blood sugars, when they get lost in that process, they look up and go, oh, wow, I've achieved my goal. This is great. I'm moving forward. But it's when they
it's fantastic.
stressed about the daily fluctuations and lose their brain in the ups and downs. I'm not making progress. I'm a failure. It's that self-defeating attitude, and I need to get to a certain place, and then I've reached my goal. Then I can go back to my life. That it just doesn't seem to fall into place. So, I mean, the other podcasts people can listen to are just insane to look at the amount of activity you've done and incorporate into your life as a habit. But I love that you're talking with Abel about the pros and cons, mostly cons of, all these people go, I'm going to go for a photo shoot or a stage competition, and they get to really shredded lean, and then they're face down in the donuts afterwards. And they've, you hear Eric Helms' story where he's obese a couple of months later after being on stage. It's just insane. And we don't want to create those people that lose a ton of weight and then rebound because they just wanted to hit a goal. They didn't want to change their lifestyle and form new habits. So, I'd love you to just talk about your psychology of that, because you talk about being on the bike and going for walks and listening to uni courses, all the time. You've got all this time doing your, cardio where you're listening to uni courses on psychology, like the smartest trainer out there, because you just continually fill your mind with it. So, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I guess where all that came in, but see, these are, so with the whole cardio thing, I never enjoyed doing that much cardio when I was doing a lot of lifting, right? So that my love for cardio just developed along with my journey and along with my sort of transformation. I never planned from day one to be like, okay, I'm going to do an hour of cardio every day for the rest of my life because I want to. That whole thing sort of cultivated. What's that? Yeah, I didn't say. Yeah, exactly. But that took me a while to view it as fun, because again, I had all these misconceptions of cardio is going to deteriorate my muscle. I'm going to become just like a skinny little weed or whatever I was telling myself at the time. And if you do it again, if I didn't do as much cardio, could I potentially have more muscle mass or whatever in my legs? Maybe. Do I really care? Not really, because the benefits I got from cardio have been exponential and have been phenomenal, and they've grounded me in my day. My morning cardio is like one of my sort of anchors in the day. I absolutely love it, and I'll make sure that I do it no matter if I had a good night's sleep, bad night's sleep, whatever it is. I will still make sure I get that morning cardio in, because it's just become so habitual, and I always feel better afterwards, no matter how I'm feeling when I go into it. I'm not, again, I got a pretty expensive spin bike now, but only because I wanted to sort of, it has like a watt meter, so you can sort of gamify it as well. I think gamifying things is really interesting. It's a fantastic thing. Yeah. It's a really
how can I improve on me? How can I continue to move forward? It's just like you get lost in it. I don't care what weight I'm putting on the bar because I'm doing a little bit more than I did last time, and it just you lose yourself in that process.
Yeah. So my whole love for cardio just started developing. I just really loved the way it made me feel. I found it also gave me a lot more endurance during my workouts. My heart health was better. My heart rate dropped, to low 40s. I've been maintaining like low 40s for the last couple of years. So. But again, like I never aimed for these things to happen. I never said to myself, this is not going to happen. I just started with the process. I started taking little steps, and then I was just like, oh wow, I really enjoy cardio. I really like cycling. But if someone was like, oh, go do elliptical for an hour, I'd be like, fuck no. Sorry for swearing. But or go on a treadmill, go run for an hour. I go, no, I don't want to do that. But I love cycling. But that was what I found really worked for me, and I really enjoy it. So I'll have like a mixture of cycling for my cardio work, and I'll do my gymnastics for resistance training. And I think the key here is that I've found two activities that I fundamentally just enjoy doing, regardless if I make progress or not. So I think one thing that I've definitely turned a corner with over the last couple of years is not being so dogmatic about exercise protocols, not just saying, well, you know, research shows that you have to do strength training, otherwise you're just going to deteriorate and lose bone density, et cetera, et cetera. And is there some truth to that? Yeah, probably. If health outcomes are your main priorities, then yeah, resistance training is going to be extremely beneficial. But if you hate it, if you absolutely hate that sort of training, then I'm still going to advocate you to do something that you enjoy doing. So I think that's probably the most important thing when it comes to exercise. Instead of trying to do what everyone says you should do, I think the first should be to just find activities that you enjoy that you can consistently do every day. And then I think once
it's the one you do and all the time, and the one you enjoy doing and you love and fall in love with.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, once they just get moving in general and they get that confidence up and they're like, oh, I actually can do more than I thought, then they can start potentially looking at other like resistance training or looking at other avenues that they've wanted to explore. I think a lot of people who haven't exercised or they don't train much, they can be intimidated when they first start, right? It can be a scary thing going into a gym, going into an area where you feel self-conscious. So we have to take all those things into consideration. If someone's like, well, I don't want to resistance train, I'm not going to say, okay, well, we can't work together. Like, well, let's find something that you can do. You know, if you love doing Zumba, if you love following like YouTube classes as you in the morning as your workout, fantastic. Let's start there and let's really work on nutrition. Let's work on your lifestyle, and you'll be amazed how many people can just transform doing that. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, but it's the small habits. It's starting doing something, going, I love this. Let's do a little bit more, and continually moving that carrot, that progressive overload down the road a little bit more. So I love the concept of progressive overload.
There has to be something that you can noticeably see yourself getting better at.
Yeah,
you know, exactly. I think a lot of people we talk about the growth mindset and being process driven. Oh, you got to love the process. Yes, you definitely got to love the process, but we are still all outcome based. We still need something that we're going to be working towards, and that is loving the process, right? It's like telling someone, oh, you got to lose 100 kilos. Just love the process and you'll be fine. You know, it's no. You need to break that 100 kilos up into, okay, 1 kilo benchmarks across X amount of time. So you have mini goals along the way to hit versus just being like, okay, you got 100 kilos. Oh, don't worry about the result. Just trust the process.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you can't
it's so important we've found to celebrate. BJ Fogg talks about celebrating the little wins, and when you do one thing, you celebrate that little thing no matter how little it is, and you find some stupid way of jumping up and down or something that physically reinforces the joy that you found in doing that one thing and achieving that one little thing, maybe one push-up or whatever it is where you're starting, or, you know, walking instead of driving for a trip somewhere. But talking about quantifying, you indulged me. You shot me a message on Facebook recently, and you said this data-driven fasting thing is pretty cool and interesting. I wonder what it'll look like for me. And I thought, yeah, that'd be so cool to look at what it would look like for somebody with 5% body fat, which is completely insane. So we talk about the personal fat threshold, that once your body fat stores get full up, your blood sugars overflow into your bloodstream, and you see diabetes and energy toxicity and the like. Basically, once your body fat stores get full, it overflows and backs up all the fuels back up in the system. So this is really fascinating. You've tracked your blood sugars for 4 days. Average is 4.785 or 85 milligrams per deciliter. Your lowest is down at 3.9, which is really healthy. And what are you doing, about 250 grams of carbs a day or per meal? 450. Or 450. So on you know, a lot of people come to data-driven fasting are on, you know, it's definitely useful to drop carbs for people who are just on this massive blood sugar insulin roller coaster. But once you get off that roller coaster and start to lose a bit of body fat, you can then tolerate, you're metabolically flexible and you can tolerate a few more carbohydrates. So for you, this is, what did you say? You went from, we got a meal, you've gone up to 5.6 after a meal. I think, what was your top? 101 milligrams per deciliter is your maximum after resistance training. So yeah, after you actually train, you release glucose from your liver as well. So that's not actually after a meal. And then what have we got? Another meal after here. 1 hour post meal, you've gone from 74 to 101, or 4.1 to 5.6. So that's just a really nice healthy range with a hell of a lot of carbs. So it's interesting to see how somebody doing 450 grams of carbs a day behaves when they're at 5% body fat. So yeah,
that is very interesting. But I would say, would you say now, because this is just theoretical, because my body fat is lower, would you say that carbohydrates become a preferred fuel source for someone like me? Or not really?
If you're doing intense activity, like you need that intense, quick burning fuel, then carbs are a great source. But I don't think at that level your body really cares what fuel source it uses. You could be high carb or low carb. You just need enough carbs for explosive activity. But maybe long distance endurance, you might do well with bit more fat or whatever, but I think you're working well. But I think the critical thing is, like, you're doing about 2.5 grams per kilo protein, aren't you? It's a good
I'll say about maybe double, maybe 2 grams per kilo. But 2 grams per kilo, a lot of carbs, and I'll go relatively low fat.
So I think that whether you're high carb or low carb, the protein is the critical element to maintaining and in weight loss, maintaining lean muscle mass to look like you ended up looking. So as long as you're getting enough protein, you're thriving. So it's just a fascinating study to see what someone who is super lean looks like in practice.
I was trying to actually find more information on blood glucose levels with like elite athletes and whatnot, and there's not much out there. And there are actually a lot of cyclists who seem to have diabetes, or on the brink of diabetes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some endurance athletes who just pound a lot of carbs can get diabetes over the long term. But I think you're a fair way away from that. But if you saw your blood sugars going up a lot all the time, but you're getting way back down low, so I think it looks like you're thriving. You're sort of potentially the specimen of metabolic health.
But what I noticed is, well, even on mornings where I would have, say, like I had a bad sleep or whatever, my blood sugars would still be normal. They wouldn't be like high, or there wouldn't be much like deviation, maybe like 0.2, 0.3. But you know how you always hear about, you get this amount of sleep and your blood levels are like pre-diabetic the next morning and so on. Not everyone.
5% body fat. So what do you see with bodybuilders or people who want to be bodybuilders who diet down to extreme levels for a show or for some short-term goal and they bounce back up? How do you change that mindset if you're not doing it for Instagram or a show, or to actually get health and maintain that level of health? What's the change of mindset in setting your goals?
Well, I think we just got to maybe add some definitions here, because from a bodybuilding perspective, remember, they're athletes and their goals are also to bulk up. Remember, they are not staying in at that level of leanness for the long term is not going to be sustainable for them building more muscle mass. You know what I mean? So the reason that they do it is more because of their sport. They're being judged on their muscles and their leanness on a certain day. So I think, if we're looking at bodybuilders, remember, they are part of their yearly sort of plan is to you spend a lot of that time actually bulking up, because you need to be in a sufficient surplus to build a good amount of muscle mass. You know, so again, as a caveat, me staying this way, I cannot say, well, I'm going to be building muscle mass over the next couple of years. I know that's not going to be happening.
Yeah.
So
you've been there, you've done that, you're ready to move on.
Exactly. But I'm not a competitive bodybuilder. I'm not being judged by coming back with more muscle the following year. So I think, remember, with bodybuilders, that's their main goal. Their goal is to lean down for a show, and then they bulk up intentionally after that. So it's not them just getting fat. I know Eric Helms has spoken about obviously making a few mistakes and not getting as fat initially. But, you know, 3DMJ, they promote really good practices after their diet, with like the recovery diet, and getting athletes to get back into a surplus and just focus on building muscle again, and not hanging out at that lean level, because it isn't conducive to building muscle over the long term. Definitely not. And that's the thing, like, this is the thing. There's a big, like, yes, I'm very, very lean, but I'm not like stage lean. You know, if I wanted to get to like stage lean, I'm not too far off, obviously, but there's a big difference between me being that and me being what I am now. So I just want to clarify that too. Like, I'm not walking around stage lean, because where people fall in that spectrum, like how good they feel after being at their leanest, that's also very individual. You know, there are some people who feel better at 10%, 15%, or whatever, and that's where their sweet spot is. But see, for me, my sweet spot is actually relatively quite low, what people would consider low. But for me, I don't see it as low. But we can talk about that later on. So,
do you think the question genetics, or what do you think makes you more able to stay lean and you know, more than other people?
I think there is a variety of factors going on. I would say yes. I think there is a genetic predisposition. I don't know, but when I say genetics, I think I mean with regards to appetite. You know, I don't have like a raging appetite all the time. You know, I don't secrete as much. What's the word? Ghrelin, maybe my GLP-1, all that sort of stuff. I think all my like hunger mechanisms are working well for me. I've never been obese, so I've never had excessive fat cells.
Yeah.
So remember, when we add fat cells, we can decrease the size of those fat cells, but we can't actually reduce those fat cells. Yeah. So taking someone who's gone from like obese to relatively lean, I in my opinion, my theoretical basis is that they are still going to be feeling hunger a lot more than someone who's naturally been at, say, 10% body fat their whole life. But someone who's gone from 30% down to 10%, even though their body fat levels are the same, I think the person who had to diet down to get there is going to be feeling more side effects compared to the one who's just lived there for a while.
Because their appetite's going to be wanting to refill their body fat stores in a hurry.
Yeah, for sure. So I think because I have relatively less fat cells, I never got over fat in my younger years. I think my leptin signaling and my insulin stuff, all that is working really, really well. I think that's in order, and it allows me to stay relatively lean. So I think that's probably a big thing that a lot of people maybe don't take into consideration. I don't get, even with the whole dopamine food reward thing, like I don't get that much of a food reward from eating. You know, I don't know if you looked into that sort of stuff with like Stephen. What's his name?
Guiana?
Yeah. So the food
hungry brain. Yeah, I'm fascinated by I think he's nailed it, that food reward's all about the dopamine hit you get, but the dopamine hit you get is because you've got fat or carbs for energy, and the body wants that fuel. But we've got this amazing food system that combines fat and carbs together that gives this double dopamine hit, and your body just goes, I love these donuts, give me the croissants, give me the cookies, and you just can't stop eating it because you've got this reinforcing cycle from this processed food. And the way to do that is to either switch to low carb or low fat, or ideally drop both for maximum satiety.
Yeah. So I think my response to like super tasty food isn't as extreme as well. Like I can easily just go, nah, I'm good with that.
You don't need comfort food.
Well, no, I don't believe in comfort food, you know. But I think maybe it's the whole mentality, right? So I don't look at it. Why are you going to food for comfort? If that makes sense. Like the way something that I like to live by. I don't know if it's more like, okay, if something is stressing you out, whatever the issue is in life, fight with a partner, stress at work, whatever. How is food ever going to fix that issue, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really. Just like it's like saying, okay, I have all these problems. I'm just going to drink and do drugs.
Yeah.
So you're doing those things to escape. You're not doing those things to actually deal with the problem. So you can engulf an entire I don't know, tub of Baskin Robbins. You're gonna half an hour later, not only are you gonna feel like crap, but the problem that was still giving you stress is still gonna be there because you haven't solved it.
Yeah.
So we're very big on advocating people to practice active coping, where your mechanism is actually dealing with the issue, not passive coping. So passive coping would be comfort eating, sort of drinking, drugs, even excessive exercise. That can be looked at as passive coping because yes, exercise is probably a better way to cope than other mechanisms, but you can go on the bike for an hour, you may feel better, but your problem is still going to be there once you get off the bike. But I think the benefit of exercise and the benefit of walking and whatnot, people always advocate walking to relieve stress, et cetera, clear your mind. I think those practices put you in a better state of mind to deal with the issue better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the thing I love about working out is that the clarity of mind and the precision of thinking that it gives you. You can come back once you're cleared all that stress from your brain. You can come back and you've got a really clear mind, and that's sort of what I value the most. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, if you don't solve the problem's still going to be there. Exactly. So how do you do active? Tell me about active coping. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's taking initiative and dealing with the problem head on versus sort of burying your head in the sand. So passive coping is anything that's going to distract you from the problem that you need to solve. But active coping is anything that's going to sort of move you towards it. So it's very similar to the gym, or it's very similar to going into like a hard set. It's up to you. Only you can do this. So you got to step up to the plate. You got to actually deal with it. You're not going to grow muscle. You're not going to get leaner by just, I don't know, burying your head in the sand and thinking that calories don't count, or something like that. You need to actively track your food. You need to actively get under that bar and make it happen. And it comes down, for an example, you have an issue with your partner or with a colleague at work. Passive coping would be bitching about that person to a friend, gossiping, or comfort eating. Active coping would be actually going, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can, I feel this way. What can we do to actually fix this? So you're taking action steps to deal with the problem, not running away from it or not avoiding it. Yeah. So that's fundamentally the difference between active and passive coping. Yeah. And that's not an easy skill. It sounds really easy because the way that we describe it, but it's hard for a lot of people. And that is why people comfort eat. In my opinion, this is why people resort to food and they resort to other things that temporarily numb their pain or they distract themselves from it, So, but as I said earlier, like you can scoff down as much food as you like. That problem is still going to be there. And you're just going to be bloated. But you still have to deal with it.
Actively deal with the crap in the rest of your life, you're less likely to turn to food in a negative way to deal with those, to soothe those emotions and get that dopamine hit that you're not getting from everything else in your life. So we're sort of completely addicted to dopamine in this world, aren't we?
Yeah. That's another can of worms, I
think. So I just wanted to talk more about, you see a lot of bodybuilders or just, people you coach that want to get super lean, but you have to back them off and say, look, that's not where you're at in your life. You can't hit 5% and stay lean like me because you have an insane work and family and these other things you have to do to cope. So how do you, like, there's a genetic component, but there's also a lifestyle component for people to choose a realistic goal. How do you guide someone as a coach to find that point? And when do you know they've hit it? When have they gone too far and they need to back off without rebounding?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's something that I'm continuing to refine all the time. With so what we like to practice, no matter who you are, we do like taking people to a level that they deem to be relatively extreme. And not because of some Instagram before and after, or not because of anything of that nature. It's because from what we have seen, the people who do take themselves and they do push their bodies in that way, the insights they gain, the mental strength they develop from just that whole procedure to getting into that state, they can actually take those things with them for life. And this is why we talk about the physical being the vehicle, because if you can do that, if you can self-inflict those things, not self-inflict, but if you can put yourself through that sort of transformation, you can take your body to that sort of level. It instills a lot of confidence in the person to be like, wow, if I could do that, I can do anything. I can, leave this job and do what I want to do. I have the confidence to do that. I can leave my partner that I absolutely hate and go find someone that respects me. So just things like that. We like to empower people through that physical transformation. And I think too many people or too many other people try to go down the other avenue of, like just be mindful and just meditate and just do this and just do that. Like all these things that they seem good on the surface, but they don't really ever transpire to anything substantial when in comparison to someone who's actually taken that physical transformation and they've seen their body change over the long term. Because that can induce a lot of confidence. And this is nothing to do with aesthetics. It's not about looking at yourself and be like, wow, look, I've got a six-pack now, I'm a better person. Nothing to do with that. It's the person you need to become for you to achieve that, because that takes action and that takes hard work. It's easy to go, oh, cool, meditated for 5 minutes today. Why hasn't my life changed? Because it's you know what I mean? Because again, I'll go back to this other example. Like meditation is another form of just like pseudo productivity or passive coping. You're thinking you're doing something. You're not doing anything. You just unless that meditation allows you to again think clearer and tackle the problem head on. So we've just seen a lot of this, and this is why we just advocate people go through a physical transformation that is obviously not a crash diet or anything like that. It's done in a methodical way. It's done in a supportive and transformative way, because of all the other benefits that come from taking yourself to the extreme. Now, do we advocate people live at that extreme? No. We don't advocate people live at that extreme, because the thing is though, once you get to the extreme and once you have a range of body weights to work with, you can then find your sweet spot. But if you've never pushed yourself and if you've never been a certain leanness, you don't have a reference point. You don't know what you feel best at. So let's just say we get someone down to like 5% because that's what they've wanted. They get there, and then we'll start reverse dieting and we'll start consolidating. We just mean like finding that person's what they want their lifestyle to look like. If they feel like absolute mud at 5% and they just continue to binge eat this and that, it's like, okay, that is not where you want to be. You're miserable. And when we say miserable, we mean can you function in your life? Can you be a good father? Can you be a good mum? Can you contribute to the world? Are you sleeping well? Is your digestion good? Is your libido good? So we look at all these biomarkers in combination with their physical appearance, their performance, and then we make the call of like, okay, well, are you happy to look, feel, and function this way? Yes or no? If yes, fantastic. This is your sweet spot.
You've arrived.
And whatever that number scale, you've arrived. Fantastic. If this is where you want to live for the rest of your life, now we can start doing things that are just going to keep you here. But again, that's a long-term experiment as well, because you need to find where you fall on that spectrum. Life circumstances can change. You can't just live. You can't dedicate 4 to 5 hours of activity every day if you're a doctor working on the floor 18 hours. Or whatever it is. If you're working in the medical field, like, no, you cannot expect to do 4 to 5 hours of activity. That's not going to happen. Can you make it happen? Yeah, but you're going to sacrifice sleep. You're going to sacrifice everything else in your life to do that. And if that makes you happy, go for it. But for most people, it's just not realistic. So it's about finding what is realistic. What is realistic? What is sustainable? And what is going to ultimately make you a better human? That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to keep people lean for the sake of staying lean, because being lean is not for everyone. Like being super lean is not something that everyone should strive for or aim for or think it's the pinnacle of a physical transformation, because it's not.
And if you haven't dealt with all the other crap along the way, like with active coping, you're still a miserable, depressed, you're just skinnier and weak and probably even more depressed, and your libido's through the floor. So how do you, that's fascinating to get them to an uncomfortable point of leanness, but then how do you wind them back up? Is it through reverse dieting, slowly backing up calories to the point that they find that they're happy?
Exactly. So again, this is going to vary from person to person. It's dependent on what they want to do. If they want to go into like a heavy muscle building phase, if they're like someone that's interested in doing that, or they just want to live at they want to live in a leaner state, but that allows them to function and be a normal human of society, right? So for that person, we will just slowly bring the calories back up, reduce their activity to something that they deem reasonable. So we will again send them a questionnaire, find out where they want to be, like what is they've done this journey now. They've taken themselves to the extreme. They've done extreme levels of activity in some cases to get there. Now, this is where the client can say, you know what, I actually like being a bit more active. I think this would be more realistic, So it could be like, I'm happy to do 10,000 steps and I'm happy to do cardio a couple times a week and weight train a couple times a week. What can we do within those parameters? And it's like, fantastic. Now we can adjust your calorie intake. We can adjust your lifestyle to suit that level of work that you're willing to commit to. So we're not trying to shove activity down people's throat. We're not trying to say, no, you have to be super active. You got to do this, you got to do that because of G-Flux. No, that is not realistic for 95% of the population who have families and who do not work in the fitness industry. I work in the fitness industry. This is why I can dedicate a lot of time to what I do. And I also love it. I get a lot of satisfaction from it. Exactly. I love it. I know that's not the same for a lot of people, but I understand that people do still want to be lean. They still want to be healthy. So we, again, need to match their lifestyle and their expectations to what is actually realistic. And then we work on creating this lifestyle solution together that allows them to, again, they've learned a lot of fantastic habits throughout the entire journey so far. So it's just about literally just fine tuning them, turning the dials up and down on a few. Is that, following a relatively, doesn't have to be a strict meal plan. Some people just like having basic structure throughout the week because you just get used to eating what you like and what you enjoy. You don't have to have variety every single meal. For a lot of people, that's just annoying and it's just a time wasting thing. But if you're happy to keep like a structure Monday to Friday, there's nothing wrong with introducing like a meal out with friends on the weekend and doing this and doing that. Just as long as you're happy to, we can incorporate that within your lifestyle and still make it work. So we're always just finding ways to, again, give the person the best life that they can live at this level of leanness that they're happy to be at. And we it's just tweaking and experimenting. It's a really fun time post diet. And again, if we go back to like gamifying things, we want to gamify it. We want to be like, hey, what happens when we track Monday to Friday, but now you intuitively eat on the weekend? Can you regulate your hunger? Can you do this? Let's work on sleep more. Let's work on this more. And it becomes a
structured, gamified approach to dialing it back up and finding your optimal that you're happy with and sustainable. I love that. So is there a typical rule of thumb? I suppose there's no real answer, but to how leans like a male in their 20s versus a female in their 50s could get down to comfortably and then come back up to? Is there what's your experience in terms of body fat, or it's hard to put a number on it? You just go to
definitely hard to put a number on it. And at the end of the day, a percentage number means nothing to me. I just want to see, okay, you look a certain way, you feel a certain way, and you're happy with a certain way. Let's just go with that. Right? And I think it does vary. So I think if we're looking at females, one thing that I'll look out for is their menstrual cycle returning. So we'll continue bringing food back in. We'll continue reducing we'll continue modifying activity and stress to a level that allows their hormones to come back into function again if they've lost their cycle. Not all of them lose their period. So for females, that's usually one of my number one goals is to get that back. And I'm obviously very clear at the start of why that happens and if they're happy to keep pushing, if that's what they want to do. So I'll always make that disclaimer. I'm not going to push females and destroy their hormones and destroy them just because it's some Instagram photo. But obviously making them aware and be like, hey, if we want to push things, these things may happen, but they also can be reversed if we do it in an intelligent way. So it's sort of having that conversation, getting them back to health. But again, when they lose it and when they regain it is very individual. Some females can get very lean and not lose it at all. Some lose it even with quite a bit of body fat on them. So it's quite variable. And for males, it's very similar to. For most, for males, it is usually around that sort of 10% mark. Anything below that, it's just you're sort of playing with fire for a lot of males, but not everyone. Again, it's going by feel and actually getting to know the client and having discussions with them. It's an interesting experiment.
Cool. Yeah, no, it sounds like a whole lot of fun and a real guided coaching experience. That it's not just here's a workout plan and a meal plan, go your hardest. It's like I've been there. I'm going to guide you through what I've been through. So it's awesome that you've done it. So G-Flux, I haven't quite heard of that. Is that sort of the concept that if you're more active, you can eat more and therefore regulate your appetite pretty much? Just unpack that a little bit. It's fascinating. So it's obviously what you've done with your massive amounts of activity.
Yeah, I think I have. I think I heard it initially from, I think, John Berardi from Precision Nutrition. This was a while ago. But the whole premise of you do more, you eat more. And, you look at many elite athletes. I think the whole Michael Phelps 10,000 calorie thing has been debunked. So I don't think he actually eats that much. But again, I think the premise is, okay, these people who are very, very active, you also need to fuel that activity with food. If we are looking at it from a body composition standpoint, in my opinion, the more food that you can consume on a diet, I think the better off you're going to be with regards to appetite regulation and things like that. But I know there are other people who, do you know Eric Trexler as well, who works with Helms? Yeah, so I know Eric Trexler. I love listening to him because he's done so much amazing work on like metabolic adaptation and all that stuff, which is just fantastic. So big shout out to him. One of my favorite sources. He doesn't know who I am, but I love his work. But the way he described his prep was literally like he doesn't move. He doesn't like walking that much. He doesn't like activity that much. He literally just sit on his butt. But he'll get down to like 1,400 calories to get into like stage condition. And he turned pro. So there are other ways to obviously do it. But I think for the general population, the number one, the more active we can get people, I think the better that is just for overall health. So, there are many other things that exercise promotes that, I think there's been this big discussion now that exercise does nothing for weight loss. And again, I understand where that's coming from, but from like a weight maintenance point of view, people who are active and who just love being active and just exercise as part of their lifestyle do seem to maintain their weight a lot more effectively than people who just rely on diet.
There's lots of research that says if you're burning more, you can better regulate your appetite rather than just you get all these people who are very inactive, maybe older people trying to diet down. They're on 1,500 calories. And it's like you can't live there. You're just going to be depressed and cold and miserable. You've got to move and build some muscle mass and feel good about yourself. Otherwise, you just can't live there without rebounding for too long.
Exactly, and also you got to think about when your calories are that low. Like there's only so many nutrients you can get in, right? Like you've done this sort of stuff with nutrient optimizer. Like the more calories you restrict, the less room for like fatty fish and things like that you want to consume. You know what I mean? Like your calories can add up very, very quickly if your calories are very, very low. I think you still can. Like I've noticed that the people on the nutrient optimizer page they get very creative with their nutrient intake, which is fantastic. So it definitely can be done. But I still think the more calories you have to play with, the easier it is for you to probably get more quality nutrients in too, without obviously gaining weight because you're active. And the way I see it, if you think about it, so from my perspective, if I'm active, say 4.5, 5 hours a day or whatever, you're not eating during those times as well because you're active, you're moving. So that's another 4 hours that you're not eating because you're engaged in something. You're engaged in activity. But if you're sitting on your butt all day, you can't regulate your hunger because you don't know if that's hunger. You just could be bored. You're just bored and I just want to entertain myself, so I'm going to eat.
I love it.
So Yeah.
So
I
calisthenics versus. Sorry, go on. You finish off.
was just going to say, like, if the more active we can get people, the better. But I know that there is constraints on that.
Yeah.
So we just got to work with that. That's all.
Yeah, and bring the energy intake back to suit. So calisthenics versus bodybuilding, pros and cons. Obviously, you can get a lot leaner without the lifting, because when you lift to gain strength, you have to gain some level of body fat, versus to get super shredded, you've gone the calisthenics aerobics sort of. Oh, sorry, more of a gymnastics sort of route.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would no, I wouldn't say that the reason I wouldn't say heavy lifting makes you gain body fat, so to speak. It's more for what I want to do. So the calisthenics stuff and the gymnastics stuff, it's more the power to weight ratio, right? Yeah. So there's an advantage to being lighter. There's an advantage to being leaner. So it encourages you to stay leaner without you knowing it, or not, without anyone sort of enforcing it. It's just like, the leaner you are, the better you're going to be able to land skills, the more mobile I can be as well, the more mobile I can be through my shoulders and hips, because I don't have as much mass there blocking things. So it's more of a byproduct again, right? So being lean is more of a if you want to be good at what you're trying to do with like the gymnastics and the Cali stuff, can you get like a little bit heavier and still do very well? 100%. There are many very, very big calisthenics athletes that do amazing stuff. But the way that I want to take my gymnastics training and all that is in a bit of a different way. It's more like hand balancing. It's more flexibility, more that sort of stuff. I don't need to be massive for those things, and I don't need to have like massive legs, because they're only going to slow me down. So I keep my legs. My legs are a lot leaner these days. From a muscle standpoint, they're a bit smaller, but they're still very lean. And that's the sort of look that I've always wanted. I've always wanted to be more athletic versus more of like a bodybuilder. Remember, a bodybuilder is being judged on stage, and being big and whatnot. That's something that's going to come down to personal preference. Yeah. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, but from my experience, I just wasn't very. I hate the word. I just wasn't very functional. Like, I couldn't really do anything. Like, I could squat heavy, I could deadlift heavy, I could do all those things, but I couldn't run across the road without my knees hurting, So, and now, like, I don't do any of those things. A lot of my leg work is like split work, like full splits in all directions. More like body weight stuff, more jumping, more like sprinting sort of work. Yeah. And my joints have never felt better in my life. Like it's insane. My recovery capacity is through the roof. Yeah, wow. I feel very, very agile. I feel amazing in my lower body, even though my muscles aren't as big as they were, right? So it's personal preference.
I love how you got a performance goal and you just love feeling this way. It's not just, I want to get lean to look good or post stuff on Insta. And I checked out your Insta before I got on here, and I don't think you've posted in 3 years. And
no, I haven't.
But most people are consciously posting stuff all the time to look for self approval in the world out there, and you've just turned that around, because you don't need the world's approval, because you're doing this for yourself. You've found a goal that you want to achieve, and you're doing it. You've dialed in your entire life to do it, and it's more than what most people can do. But I'm just fascinated that you've just said, that's what I want. I'm going to nail it. I'm going to do everything I can to maintain it, because that's my thing. I love it. So
on that as well, it's funny that you said that, because I'm still very I'm performance based, right? So like I don't what's the right word? I don't tackle my day to being like, okay, how am I going to stay lean today? It's more just being lean, or whatever you want to call it, is more just a byproduct of my lifestyle. And performance things that I want to work on. Me being this lean doesn't affect my performance in all my other areas of my life. Which I think is very key for people to take into consideration. Because if my priorities were muscle building and wanting to be bigger, then I cannot stay this lean and expect to do that. That in that context, being lean is going to hinder my performance. If my goals were to be, say, like or be like a strong man or like a power lifter or anything that is required of a bigger body, then no, I'm going to be doing a disservice for myself by being this lean. If my mental health was deteriorating, if I wasn't performing at work, if I wasn't providing a service to my clients, if I wasn't being just a good human in general, then being lean would then be a negative impact in my life, because I'm not going to. A lot of people think that it's just me being really, really disciplined to stay this way. The thing is, though, if I felt like absolute dog shit every day, I would definitely not stay like this.
Yeah. And you look like you're
100%.
thriving and vibrant and thinking clearly and great.
Well, that's what I mean. And again, I think it could be, as we said earlier, it's a combination of genetics, combination of lifestyle, but it's also a combination of priorities too. This is a big priority for me. I love feeling good. I love performing well. But for myself, again, as you said, you haven't seen an Instagram post from me in like 3-4 years. But that's again, because I just like testing my body. I like pushing my body. And I speak to a few other older athletes who do the stuff that I do, who are like well into their 40s and 50s, and they still look like they're 20, you know, because of the functional aspect of all this sort of training. So it's really motivating. It's really motivating to be like, okay, these people are still strong, agile. They don't have, just because they're older doesn't mean that they're deteriorating. And you look at many bodybuilders, or you look at many people who have spent their whole life just trying to build more and more muscle. There's only so much more muscle you can build after a certain age, unless you want to start taking exogenous supplements. And if that, the thing is, if that has been your whole reason to train your whole life, to just look big, what's going to keep you training when you cannot grow anymore? You know what I mean? Like, what's going to keep you training if all you ever focused on was your biceps or your pecs or whatever it was? So I have made, I'm lucky that I have made, I'm going to say it's lucky I made that switch to performance, because that's going to allow me to always have goals to be aiming for, regardless of my age. I'm not going to, me chasing a certain goal isn't going to be only reliant on muscle mass. You know what I mean? There are so many other things that I can be working towards that are still going to allow me to love training and to just love moving. And I don't think I'll ever stop. You know, it's the thing that's my biggest fear is probably, you know, just, I don't know, something happening to my body or whatever, you know, like in a way that I'm immobile, you know, or whatever it is. But
you just seem eternally grateful for your ability to move, and you're just maxing that out. You know, just
yes, that's actually one thing I'm very adamant on. I think I've mentioned this in a few podcasts, but I live near a trauma ward, so you know where people go for like rehab. So I see them being cared for, and I see like them being walked around, or being, you know, they're in their wheelchairs going around the block, and I'm like, man, it is such a privilege to be able to walk, to be able to do my cardio. It's a privilege to be able to go train and move my body the way I want, that I can. You know, it's an absolute, like, we should all be super grateful that we can do that. It's because not everyone can. So I've always been very adamant on that. That's always, I don't know, that's always really impacted me in a big way.
I love the passion. And it just doesn't seem to be hard for you anymore, because it's just, this is your thing, this is your goal, and it's just become your lifestyle and your habit and your routine. Like, you don't have to get up and go, oh, geez, I have to do this, and this today because I've got some goal. It's just so intrinsic to who you are and your habits. And it's just something I think a lot of people can learn from, that you're not just trying to hit a goal and then get back to the rest of your life. It's like, I'm going to change my life so it enables me to maintain who I want to be for the rest of my life, to age well and be healthy and vibrant and independent. I want to be, you know, I say I want to be able to wipe my own bum for as long as I can. You don't want to be fed by other people and dependent on other people for toileting and be frail and fall over and break your hip, and you just don't. That happens to so many people. So
it's so insane. But yeah, it's fascinating. And I think do you know Mark Manson, the author?
Oh, I've heard the name. Yeah, tell me.
I think he has to be my favorite author. He's written 2 amazing books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and Everything is Fucked. So one of the big things he talks about with anyone wanting to sort of achieve like a big goal is, people always they always focus on the benefits they're going to get from that goal, right? They're always like, oh, I want those abs because of the attention, or I want those abs because of this. But no one ever asks, what am I willing to actually suffer for? What am I willing to just give up, right? Or the same thing can be said for people that make millions. I want to be a millionaire. Okay, are you happy to work 80-hour plus weeks for years on end, potentially have horrible relationships, potentially destroy your health, etc., etc.? Are you willing to do those things? And most people will be like, oh, probably not.
Probably not. Didn't really want it badly.
Exactly, and the same thing can be said for fitness or for any sort of goal, right? It's like, what are you willing to sort of suffer for and accept? And I think that comes with anything that you really want to strive for. Because I'm not going to say here and go like every day is a breeze. Like there are days where I feel absolutely smashed, or like sometimes if I push too hard on like rings or whatever, like my joints will feel sore. Like, sometimes I'll feel like, what the hell? I've got like nothing today. And those things happen, but that comes part and parcel. I'm not going to sit here and say I feel great all the time. But no one feels great all the time, right? So it's about understanding like what are you willing to suffer for sometimes, versus what are the good what's the good stuff that you get from this endeavor? Are you willing to get like you did your engineering degree, right? You're an engineer, yeah.
Yep.
That's a long road to do, right? To get your degree, it's not easy, man.
Yeah.
But you were driven, keep going, because the pain of not getting it was probably worse than the pain of getting it.
I'm driven to solve the nutritional density and nutrient optimization because there's a big picture goal there, and it's worth the sacrifice. And I love the process. So
I've seen how much work you've done with your stuff, and it's amazing. Like honestly, the work you've done on how you've quantified nutrition has been game changing. I forgot to mention, like ever since that you gave me my nutrient optimizer score, like I've been I've been adamant of including liver in my diet. I've been adamant of including like omega-3s and again those things that I never really would have considered as much when you put my meal plan through the ringer. And it's been great. That's because of your work. And I've actually quoted a lot of your work in just the stuff that I've given to clients. So it's been that's good. So
good idea spread. Thanks, man. Nice to be an influence in someone who's so well researched. So to wrap up, we've hit the hour. So thanks so much. So people can't follow you on Instagram, Facebook, or really anywhere other than you've got a RNT podcast and the RNT fitness website, which you're a part of, and you do group coaching and one-on-one is pretty booked up because everybody wants to look like Ivan.
Yes. Our current intakes are all full at the moment, but that doesn't mean that you guys can't go in there. We provide so much like free educational content. We've always been big on just giving people as much education for free, just because I think people, very similar to you, Marty, like you've put out a lot of stuff for free. So we've always been just really trying to push education, push empowerment. So even though everything is sort of taken up at the moment, you can still definitely dive in on all the articles that we put out, all the podcasts that we're doing. We have really deep discussions pretty much every single week. Pretty much like the discussions that we had today are very similar to what you'll get on the podcast. So if anyone is interested in more of that side of stuff, we talk about nutrition, training, mindset, big time. That's probably the place to go.
No, thank you for coming on. Everybody's saying what a great chat it's been, and I've just been fascinated by your mindset and the mental game you've applied to this. And I think we've got so much in common that we're willing to just go, that's my thing, and that's my jam. I'm going to follow that down the rabbit hole as far as I can and see where it leads, just for the hell of it, because I love it. So, that's great that you've actioned that for you and for your clients. What's that?
Life would be boring otherwise when you think about it. Right? You need something. You need a project. You need things to be working towards, I think.
So. Life is dull without a complete OCD obsession in your life to try and cope with. So, that's great.
Correct.
Cool, man. It's been so much fun. Thank you. This has been perfect. Exactly what I wanted to get out and share a piece of Ivan with the world rather than just talking about how to get abs and what should I eat. So, thanks so much. It's been great.
No worries. Thanks, man.
Thanks, dude. Thanks, everyone, for listening in.